I remember the cold first. A deep kind of cold that settles into the pavement long before midnight and clings long after sunrise. Oregon nights have a way of swallowing sound, leaving only the hum of the engine and the faint hiss of tires on damp road. I was driving along Route Hollow, a forgotten stretch of highway cutting through forest so dense it always felt like the trees leaned in to listen. Fog turned my headlights into a narrow tunnel of weak light. I had driven that road 1,000 times, but that night the air tasted metallic, like wet iron, and the woods felt too still. No owls, no wind, nothing. I slowed near a turnout, easing around a frost-slick branch. That was when something moved. A massive shape staggered out of the tree line and into my headlights. I slammed the brakes. The cruiser skidded, and the thing hit the hood with a heavy thud before sliding off and collapsing onto the pavement. For a moment I just gripped the wheel, staring. At first I thought it was a bear, but the shape was wrong. Too long, too thin in places, hunched as if the bones underneath could not decide what they wanted to be. I stepped out into the cold. Up close, it looked worse. Dark fur matted with blood, limbs too long, chest heaving in uneven gasps. As I watched, patches of hair seemed to retreat into the skin, revealing pale flesh. Long claws scraped the pavement, then twitched as they began to curl inward like fingers. It made a sound. A low, broken groan that shifted into something almost like speech. Help! The word lodged in my chest. My hand hovered near my holster, but I crouched beside it. The smell of blood was thick and hot, mixed with something sharp and strange, like air after a lightning strike. I told myself this was a man, a horribly injured man. Yet the body before me shifted in ways no man's body should. One eye opened. Yellow at first, reflecting the headlights, then softening into a human brown. It did not look at me like an animal. It looked at me like a dying person recognizing the last face they might see. Against every instinct, I grabbed it under the arms and dragged it toward the cruiser. It felt like lifting a slab of meat and iron. I wrestled it into the back seat, where it collapsed with a low, guttural sound that vibrated through the car. I shut the door and sat behind the wheel, breathing hard. I locked the doors without thinking, as if that would mean anything. Before I put the car in gear, I glanced in the rearview mirror. Blood smeared across the vinyl seat. Under the dome light, it shone a familiar shade. Red. Human red. I touched it with a cloth. Warm. I drove toward the station, eyes flicking back to the mirror. The creature lay still, chest rising and falling in shallow breaths. In one moment of relative stillness, the twisting muscles of its face relaxed, and I saw a human face beneath the monstrous outline. Bruised, pale, young. Then its features shifted again, as if something under the skin refused to stay put. Fog thickened around the cruiser. I wanted to turn around, to dump whatever I had found back into the dark and never speak of it again. But I kept hearing that single word in my head. Help. So I brought it in. The station lights appeared ahead like distant stars. When I parked, I hesitated, then opened the back door. The creature was motionless, but when I leaned in I saw a fresh drop of blood beside him. I touched it through my glove. Still warm, still human. Whatever else he was, one thing was certain. This thing bled like a person. I hauled him inside and secured him in a holding room, restraints ready if I needed them. Then I drew a vial of blood. My hands shook as I labeled it and packed it. I sent it to a contact at a state lab I trusted. No details, no story, just an urgent request that I thought I might regret the favor. I did not understand how much. Hours later, long before dawn, the phone rang. We have a match, the voice said. The tone was wrong. Strained. I asked who. Silence stretched too long. Then the answer came. An FBI agent. Declared dead 25 years ago. My blood went cold. Down the corridor, something shifted in the holding room. The station felt too quiet. I kept glancing toward the reinforced glass as if the walls might move. The creature lay on the cot where I had left him. Every few minutes his chest hitched or a muscle spasmed. Proof that whatever he was still alive. Still changing. I stared at the phone long after the call ended. An agent declared dead in 1998. No body, no suspect, Just a file that stopped. I finally forced myself toward the holding room. Through the glass, I watched his breathing soften. Sometimes his limbs jerked as if he were fighting something inside himself. The claws were shorter now, more like nails. Patches of fur had thinned into skin. Around his mouth, dried blood clung to his chin. Human blood. I unlocked the door and stepped in, shining my flashlight over his body. The transformation made no sense. It was like watching two lives trying to occupy one shell. The monstrous snout had shortened. The brow had smoothed just enough that I could almost see the man he had been. The man whose photo I had just seen. "Who are you?" I whispered, without meaning to. A faint exhale escaped him. Not a growl. A sigh. I stepped back. His skin rippled, muscles shifting beneath the surface as if something tried to crawl out. His ribcage expanded too far, then snapped back. For a moment I thought he might stop breathing. I retreated to the office and pulled up the Federal Archive. The missing agent had vanished during an undercover operation in a forested region not far from Route Hollow. The file ended with a neat declaration of death. No body. No explanation. Just gone. The photo showed a young man with a sharp jawline and dark hair. His eyes looked like he was carrying a weight he could not talk about. When I zoomed in on the eyes and then looked back through the glass at the creature's half-changed face, the resemblance was there. In the brow, the jaw, the way the eyes seemed to hold something back even when closed. Nothing in my training had prepared me for this. The phone rang again. "Sheriff here." This voice was new, deeper, controlled. "Sheriff, this is Special Agent Monroe. You submitted a blood sample tonight. I need to know why. I had sent it through quiet channels. No station ID, no official tag. Yet they were calling within hours. My spine stiffened. "Standard sample," I said. "Found on a scene. Wanted to rule out contamination." Silence stretched. The sample matched an agent who has been deceased for over 20 years. Monroe said. "I know." I answered before I could stop myself. Another pause. Sharper. "How exactly do you know that, Sheriff?" "Because the man in my holding room looks like he is trying to become him." I regretted saying it immediately. "Listen carefully," Monroe said. "Keep that sample secure. Do not disclose the identity. Do not document anything. And do not allow anyone near the subject without authorization." Subject. Not victim. Not survivor. Subject. Before I could ask anything else, the line went dead. Fog pressed against the station windows, restless and thick. The fluorescent light overhead flickered. I went back to the holding room. This time he was sitting up. Not fully human. Not fully wolf. Something in between. His eyes opened slowly. No longer yellow. Dark brown. Steady. The same eyes from the photograph. "Sheriff," he rasped. Hearing my title in that broken, human voice chilled me more than any roar. He raised a hand toward the bars. A human hand now, streaked with dried blood, trembling with effort. "Who are you?" I forced out, his expression twisted under the strain. Pain. Memory. Fear. Something older still. "They lied," he whispered, the words scraping out like they had been buried for years. "Who lied?" "The government." The lights flickered. The air grew colder. Outside, the fog thickened against the glass. "They said I died," he said, staring at his stained hands. "But they did something else." Silence pressed into the room. Then he whispered one final word before his body seized and the change took hold again, dragging him toward the monstrous shape. Experiment. The station seemed to shrink around me. His body convulsed, muscles twisting like ropes pulled too tight. Fur pushed through skin and retreated, bones cracking softly. His hands curled into claws, then straightened, then curled again. "What did they do to you?" I asked, my voice barely steady. He did not answer. Bones shifted, skin stretched. His fingers dug into the metal cot, bending it inward. I flipped the light off, leaving only the faint glow from the corridor. In the dimness, the growls faded into a rasp. His form settled into something closer to human again. His breathing slowed. I stepped closer. In the shadows, his face flickered between monster and man. For a heartbeat, his eyes were fully human. "Tell me what happened," I said that he swallowed, every movement stiff. They needed a way inside, he said. A way to blend. A way to survive. They needed a way inside, he said. A way to blend. A way to survive. Who needed, I asked. He closed his eyes. My unit. The agency. We had reports back in the 90s about something moving through these forests. Informants disappeared. Bodies torn apart like nothing we knew. They tried to track it. They tried to kill it. They failed. A chill crawled along my neck. So they made their own creature, he said. He nodded faintly. They said it would be controlled. Temporary. Reversible. His voice cracked. They lied. He looked smaller then, folded in on himself, caught in a body that refused to be one thing or the other. Human face. Animal limbs. A shape that did not belong anywhere. What happened to your team, I asked. His jaw tightened. His back arched as another tremor of change ran through him, but he forced his breath steady. They never made it out, he said. You did. Only halfway. The room felt colder. I lifted my radio, desperate for another voice, some normal sound to break the weight of his story. The moment I pressed the button, the speaker filled with deep static, not the usual kind. There was a low rumble beneath it, like a growl buried underwater. I lowered it slowly. His eyes opened wider. Do not call them. Why not? Because they will not help you, he said. They will take me. They will bury everything. Just like they buried me 25 years ago. My grip tightened on the bars. What are you running from? He answered slowly, as though the words themselves were dangerous. From what I became. And from the thing they made me hunt. A faint tremor passed under the floor, so light I could have ignored it, but heavy enough to feel. I looked toward the window. Fog had built into a solid wall of gray. The road outside was gone. The hairs on my arms rose. Something moved as a shadow across the frosted glass. Too tall to be a person. Too wrong in shape to be any animal out here. What is out there? I whispered. He drew in a shuddering breath. You do not want to know. Tell me. He lifted his head, eyes haunted. The one that changed me. The one that killed my team. The one they tried to control. The legend that came first. Say it, I said. His voice fell to a thin, frozen whisper. The first werewolf. The fog seemed to press harder into the windows. In the distance, beyond the station and the road and the trees, a long, low howl rose through the night. Ancient. Hollow. Answering its wounded kin. The sound slid through the walls and into my bones. When it faded, the silence felt worse. The creature in the cell stared toward the window, face drawn tight. Found me, he said. What does it want? It wants me back, he answered. Or dead. It does not care which. Something slammed into the side of the building then. The windows rattled. It might have been wind, but the impact had weight. I pressed my hand to the glass. It burned with cold. Why now, I asked. After all these years. Because you stopped my blood from finishing what it was meant to do, he said. What does that mean? My body changes on its own. It was not the road that almost killed me. It was him. His claws. He finally found me. When I hit your car, he lost the trail. So he followed the only thing left. The scent of the blood that refuses to finish dying. The building groaned. A low, straining sound, as if the concrete itself did not want to hold together. The fog outside thickened until the windows looked painted over. The radio on my belt crackled again. A deep broken noise like earth shifting underground. The lights dimmed, flickering in slow jerks. The heater shut off with a dull click. The temperature dropped fast enough that I saw my breath. He is close, the creature said softly. I felt it then. Not a sound, but a vibration under my feet. Slow, heavy, coming nearer. How do we stop him? I whispered. You do not, he said. They never stopped him. They tried to contain him. Then they tried to build a cleaner version of him. They failed twice. Another vibration shook the wall. Closer. I raised my weapon and it felt small in my hand. Sheriff, he said suddenly, eyes sharp now. If he gets inside, you run. Do not fight. Do not try to understand him. You will not win. What about you? I asked. If he takes me, he said, I become what he is. All the way. No human left. That is what he wants. A sharp crack cut through the air. I spun toward the far window. A spiderweb of white fractures crawled across the glass from a single point, as though something outside was pressing into it with slow, patient force. I took a step back, gun raised. He is testing the walls, the creature said. He always tests first. Another crack, deeper. The glass bowed ever so slightly. The air turned knife cold. The man in the cell shook, fighting another wave of change. His limbs lengthened, then snapped back. His teeth clenched against a growl trying to tear its way out. If I change fully, Sheriff, get out, he said. Do not come near me. I am not leaving you in here with him, I answered. You are safer without me. A thin line of frost edged along the broken window. A shadow leaned into it from outside, too tall, its head the wrong shape for anything natural. A claw traced the cracked surface with slow care, making a delicate scraping sound that set my teeth on edge. The station lights flickered, then died. Darkness swallowed everything. For a few seconds, I could not even hear myself breathe. Then the sounds came. Two kinds of breathing. One ragged and uneven inside the cell. One slow and steady outside the wall. The darkness felt thick enough to touch. Something slid along the outer frame of the window, claws on metal, claws on wood. The creature in the cell snarled, bones cracking as his body surrendered again to the change. Then everything stopped. The cold hung suspended. Through the glass, the fog glowed faintly as if something enormous stood just beyond the broken pane. For a heartbeat I thought they were both gone. A low, rumbling growl rose from inside the cell. A deeper one answered from outside. They did not need words. It was recognition, challenge, claim. The chains on the cell door rattled, though nothing touched them. I understood then that this was not some random hunt. This was a bond between predators shaped by the same experiment, pulled back together by blood. If either of you comes closer, I will shoot, I whispered into the dark. The sentence fell flat, swallowed without echo. A shape rose in the gloom, tall and thin, unfolding in a way that made my stomach turn. The emergency lights flickered for a single flash. It was enough. It stood just inside the shattered window. Limbs too long. Skin stretched and scarred, like something that had ripped itself out of a body that no longer fit. Pale eyes glowed with a tired, sick light, and beneath the twisted angles of its face, I saw a ghost of something familiar. The missing agent, or what was left of him. The lights died again. The roar that tore out of the cell shook the hallway. A second roar thundered from the window. Then the world exploded in sound. The crash of bodies slamming into steel. Claws on concrete. Snarls that barely sounded like they came from throats. The station shook hard enough that dust drifted down from the ceiling. I dropped to one knee, covering my head, my gun useless in my hand. Then, just as suddenly as it began, it ended. Silence flooded back in. A few seconds later, the emergency lights sputtered on again, weak and pale. The window was blown inward. Shards of glass scattered across the floor. The bars of the cell were bent a few inches, not ripped apart, just warped like someone had tested them and chosen not to force them. Smears of blood trailed from the cot toward the open gap where the window had been. But there were no bodies, no footprints, only the cold and the smell of something that should not exist. I stepped carefully into the room. The concrete was slick with blood in thin arcs and scattered drops. I reached down and touched one. It was still warm. By morning it would be dark and glossy. It would never quite dry. In my report I wrote what they expected. An animal collision on the road. A damaged window from wind and debris. No mention of the man in the cell. No mention of the agent record. No mention of the howl outside or the way the blood refused to freeze. No one asked many questions. The federal call I had received in the night never appeared in our logs. When a team came to replace the glass, they worked fast and left faster. I did not ask anyone to straighten the bars. I stayed on for another year, showing up for shifts, answering calls, pretending the world still worked the way I had believed it did. But every time the moon rose full and the fog crawled up from the trees, I thought about that shattered window and the two shapes disappearing into the night. Twice after that, I knew they had come back. Once, in spring, I stepped out onto my back porch and saw a tall figure at the treeline. It did not move toward me. It did not need to. I knew the way it held itself. Tired, watchful, waiting. I knew those pale eyes, even from a distance. The missing agent. The second time, in late autumn, I heard heavy footsteps on the old patrol road near my house. I saw nothing through the trees, but the smell of cold earth and metal drifted on the wind. The same smell that had filled my cruiser that night on Route Hollow. Every full moon after that, I thought of what he had said. If he catches me, he will make me what he is. That night, he never finished the wounded creature. He took him or freed him or claimed him. I do not know which, but I know he is not done. Not with the man they experimented on. Not with the forests they used as a laboratory. Not with us. The blood test was the beginning. A simple vial in the back of my cruiser. A match that pulled an old federal ghost back into the light. Now, years later, I patrol that road only in my sleep. Fog swallowing the headlights. Forest leaning in. The memory of a body collapsing against my hood. I am not sheriff anymore, but I still know the sound of claws on concrete. I still see pale eyes when the power flickers during a storm. And I know this more surely than I know anything I ever signed my name on. That blood in my cruiser did not belong to a monster. It belonged to a man the government declared dead in 1998. And whatever he is now, out there in the dark woods of Oregon, he is not finished with us.